Welcome to the Newberg Public Schools online symposium on mental health awareness. As you probably know, last month, the month of May, was Mental Health Awareness Month. Throughout the month of May, the Newberg Public Schools communications team interviewed multiple individuals that operate in the mental health arena. We've curated those conversations to create the presentation that you are about to see. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Steve Phillips here with Newberg Public Schools, and today I'm introducing something a little different. In the past, we've done a symposium at the high school auditorium about fentanyl awareness. We also did one about bullying and the dangers of bullying, and this one we're trying to do something a little different. It's about mental health awareness and kind of the plague that it is on our community and specifically some of our students. When it comes to depression and anxiety and also attempted suicides, it's just something that we really wanted to talk about. So today, instead of having a symposium in person, we've put one together that's all on video. It'll be a little over a half hour long. We've got some great experts, local experts, as well as police department, Providence Health, county experts, some just citizens, some Newberg Public School staff, all working together to put this video together, to put this symposium together, talking about mental health and what we can do better to help our kids and help our community. There's a stigma attached with mental health, and I think that's one thing that we need to get past, is the stigma about it, and just the fact that people don't want to talk about it. So this is a first step. It's something that I think we can do to work together to bring awareness to it and to help kids. So thanks for joining us today.
My name is Mark Brown. I am one of the assistant principals here at Newberg High School, and I'm super excited to get to share with you a little bit around the topic of mental health and mental health awareness. We all know that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I think it's a good thing every year to take the month of May and focus on our mental health, talk about our mental health, make sure that we are all aware of the resources that are available to us. And I know here at Newberg High School and Newberg School District, we have a ton of resources through our Wellness Center and the School-Based Health Center, through the Counseling Office, and just anywhere you go, there are resources available. So I know there's some others that are going to more specifically share about that. I want to encourage us all today just with the idea that we all have mental health. You have mental health. I have mental health. Every single one of us, we have mental health. So one of the goals I have for me personally in my life is I want to make the conversation around mental health normal. And for a long time, it's kind of been a taboo topic, something that we haven't wanted to talk about, or we weren't sure if we were allowed to talk about it. But if it's something we all have, it's something we should be able to talk about, my opinion. And I hope that you, after watching this video and participating in some of the different activities around mental health awareness, I hope that that's something we can all agree on, that it's something we all have, so let's talk about it. Another thing about mental health, it doesn't have to be something that is always about sadness and grief and depression. Yes, that's very much a part of it, but I like to focus on the positive things about my mental health. And one of those is the idea that every single day I can work on my mental health. I don't know what's going to happen today. There's going to be so many things that happen in my life outside of my control that impact my mental health, both in a good way and maybe not in a good way. I don't know if and when I'm going to face a mental health challenge or a mental health, something that really has a big, hard, negative impact on my life. I don't know if and when that's going to happen. So what am I doing right now today to work on my mental health, so that if I'm in a bad spot, I can get into a better spot, or if I'm in a good spot, making sure I'm prepared for when something in life happens that challenges my mental health, I'm ready to take it on. And so I know for me, there's a lot of things that I do. I like to put tangible reminders in place. I have a playlist that I listen to every single day. It's the same 5 or 6 songs, but it's songs that I've specifically chosen and picked and put into a playlist that remind me every single day of the things that are important to me. Another thing I've done is I've made the intentional effort to really invest and engage in meaningful relationships, positive relationships, making sure that I'm connecting with people that are going to be there for me no matter what. So that if I'm having a bad day, I know they're going to be there to pick me up. If I need someone to talk to, I know they're going to listen without judging me, making sure that I continue to invest in those relationships. And that's a lot harder to do than it even sounds, because we're busy and life is crazy and there's a lot of things going on and we're under a lot of stress and pressure, and I need to make sure that I'm intentional about keeping those relationships, keeping those positive connections, because we are all in this together, and I am a better person because of who I'm associated with and the people that I choose to spend my time around. I think the last thing I want to leave you with is a quick story. It's one of my favorite stories. It comes out of Harvard University from the 1950s. Dr. Kurt Richter, get his name correct, Kurt Richter. He was a researcher at Harvard, and he did this experiment. What he did is he took rats, and he took these rats and he threw them in tubs of water, and he started timing them. And he wanted to see how long they would last in the water. And he was really disappointed because as he was watching, most of the rats died and drowned after only 15 minutes. And he was really upset and kind of distressed and confused about how did they only last 15 minutes? So, like any good researcher does, he redid the experiment. But this time, when he put them in the bucket of water, he started the timer and he watched very closely. And as the rats started to struggle, and as it looked like they were about to give up and about to drown, he took them out of the water. And he took them out and he gave them rest. And he and his research team, they actually cuddled the rats against their chest. They dried them off. They measured their heart rate. And once they had that little bit of rest, that little bit of comfort, and their heart rate went back down to a normal beat, they put them back in the water and they started the timer again. Now remember, the first time the rats only lasted 15 minutes. This second time, the rats lasted an average of 60 hours. They were amazed at what they found and the outcomes of this research. And it's come to be known as the hope experiment. And what Dr. Richter and his team found is that hope is one of the most powerful things that we as human beings have. They've gone on to do more research around this and connected it to the human experience. And they've concluded that hope is one of the most powerful things that we have. And so my encouragement to you is hang on to hope. Hang on to that hope that we have. If you're in a tough place right now, if things are hard for you, there's always hope for a better tomorrow. And hold on to that hope by finding those connections, finding those relationships, taking advantage of the resources that are available, and make sure that you always remember that we here at Newberg High School, at Newberg School District, we love you, we care about you, and we are in this with you. And so together, let's move forward with that hope that things are always going to be better.
My name is Kelsey Murray, and I work for Yamhill County Public Health as the Suicide Prevention Coordinator. So Yamhill County Public Health sees patients across the county for different services, just general checkups, well wound exams, and also we have a prevention team, which is a team that I am part of, and my specific role is suicide prevention. We have a variety of people on our teams that focus on holistic, all-around wellness of our community. So in my role as the Suicide Prevention Coordinator, I am responsible for a vast majority of the suicide prevention and intervention trainings that we do through K through 12 schools, through local businesses and organizations. And we just really want to make sure that people are aware of the warning signs and how they can help someone if they are in a mental health crisis. In the state of Oregon, as well as in Yamhill County, suicide is the second leading cause of death for our youth ages 10 to 24. And so that's why it's really important for me to get out into our schools and teach people about the warning signs. So a way to summarize our warning signs for anyone of any age is a change in behavior that seems drastic. We can look for an increase in use of drug or alcohol, withdrawing, anger and aggression that seems out of place, looking for means of a way to end their life. So maybe they're doing some searches on the internet about methods of dying by suicide. Maybe they are asking around. Another major clue is them talking about wanting to die. It can look like I've decided that I'm going to end my life, or maybe it looks like, I just don't want to be here anymore. No one would care about me. And especially for our youth, they may use words like, sometimes I just want to go to sleep and never wake up again. And so when people say things like that, it is so important for us to take an action. And that's when we start talking about asking the question. Before we go into that, I want to make sure that everyone knows that asking someone if they're considering suicide is not going to make them think about it if they are not thinking about it already. So you're never going to put the thought into someone's head. So asking that question, that always feels really scary. And as someone who has asked the question many, many times, it never gets any easier, but you do learn how important it is. So how you ask someone if they're thinking about suicide. I'm wondering if you are thinking about suicide. That's pretty straightforward. Sometimes you can ask them, you seem like you've been really sad recently. And I know people, when they are as sad as you seem, they sometimes wish that they were dead. I'm wondering if you're feeling that way too. And when people ask that question, if someone is experiencing suicidality, they will answer yes or no. Most of the time, they will be completely honest because they are looking for someone to notice that they are struggling, and they're looking for that person to take notice and take charge and to help them. Because asking for help can be really scary for any subject. But imagine asking for help if you're thinking about suicide, something that is so stigmatized and really scary. So when you reach out to someone that you've noticed is struggling, and you ask them, they will feel seen and heard. They will experience a drop in anxiety, and they're actually less likely to attempt suicide. So that is why it's so important to ask that question. So what happens when you ask the question and someone says, I am thinking about suicide? First, it's important to remember that if they're with you in that moment, they're safe. So you don't need to kind of rush about this conversation. You can just sit with them and be in that moment. Let them know that they are loved, that they are cared for. You can use your relationship with them and say, I care about you. I want you to be here tomorrow or the next day because I care about you. And then you're going to want to persuade them to find help. And it's important to remember that sometimes when people are experiencing suicidality, they feel they cannot be helped, that they are beyond help. So you sometimes have to convince them that that's not true. They can be helped. And so we need to know how to convince people that they are worthy of help. And I like to use phrases like, let me help you get help. Like, I will help you find help. And then you're going to go into referring them to resources. And so throughout this presentation, there will be resources that are talked about, but I do want to highlight a couple. First, we have a 3-digit phone number across the country, 988. It happened this summer, 2022, and we wanted to equate a mental health crisis with a physical health crisis. There should be a 3-digit number that anyone can call. So you can call this number if you're struggling yourself, if you are worried about someone else, or you can call that number with a friend who is struggling, and you can be with them throughout that conversation. So 988 is the National Suicide Crisis Lifeline. There's also our Teen Lifeline. So you can text teen to teen, and your teenager will be connected with another teen who is trained in suicide prevention, because sometimes they don't want to talk to an adult. They want to talk to someone who is the same age, maybe going through the same things, and that they can feel a little bit more comfortable. Because any acceptance of help or desire to get help is so important, because that shows that they're wanting to continue to live. They see their future. So I want to say thank you for watching this. Thank you for taking an interest in saving lives, because I know that it's everyday people, our community, who do save lives. So we're the ones who notice when people are struggling. And so when everyday people are trained to notice the warning signs, then we can actually take action to save that life. Because it's so important to save every single life, because suicide is preventable. Remember, you will save a life by asking the question. You are so important, and I depend on you to ask if someone is thinking about ending their life. If you're interested in learning more about suicide prevention and intervention, feel free to contact me at the information below, and I can offer you QPR training. It is an hour-and-a-half training free through the county, where you learn about recognizing signs and then acting to save a life. Again, thank you so much for taking an interest in this. I am truly so thankful for each and every one of you and the care that you are giving your community, your students, your friends, and just your world.
Hi, I'm Amy Wolff, the founder of the Don't Give Up movement, a global movement of spreading hope and love that started right here in Newberg, Oregon. In May 2017, there were a string of suicides in Newberg. I remember sitting with my young family and thinking, what can I do? I'm not a mental health expert. I'm not in the school system to support students. Who am I? But I remember feeling desperate to do something. So my family and I printed 20 encouraging yard signs and stuck them around town. We thought, will these help anyone? In fact, I remember driving home that night and thinking, this is the worst idea I have ever had. This will help nobody. Don't give up on a yard sign. Well, good news, it did help people, lots of people. In fact, it spread in 18 months to all 50 states and over 26 countries. Yard signs to wristbands, to card decals, to stickers and pins. Evidently, spreading hope and love isn't too complicated. I'm wondering if, as you're learning more about mental health and challenges, if you're feeling a little bit like I did several years ago, what can I do? Am I qualified? What I do, would it even matter? Is it a silly idea? And to that, I want to leave you with empowerment. Do something. Maybe it's a small impact on one person, or maybe it does become this huge global movement of spreading hope and love. But take courage, take action. Maybe you have your own pain in your own wounds. None of us are perfect. So don't wait until you're perfect. Don't wait until you have this perfect plan. But today, decide to show up and do something for somebody. There was a time in my life where I had my own wounds and I was struggling. I was 14 years old and I had just witnessed the death of my brother, Jeremy. And there were a lot of people around my suffering wondering, gosh, how can I help Amy and what can I do? Well, let me tell you about what some people did that maybe seemed really small and insignificant to them, but it was really deeply impactful to me. People put the date of my brother's death on their calendar. And although the first couple weeks and months we got letters and flowers and people remembering, it was really the text messages and the notes a year later and 2 years later and 5 years later that was the most deeply meaningful to me and my family. So what's something small they did? They put a date in their calendar and they sent me a text message. Sometimes I think we underestimate the power of these small decisions and actions, and it could be as simple as remembering. I want to end with a big thank you for all of you who have chosen to show up and participate and watch in this event. I think it can be easy to shy away from hard, complicated conversations like this. And so thank you. Thank you for caring. Thank you for getting curious, for holding space for pain and hard conversations. And I hope that this collective conversation that we're having stirs you to action, to do something, to not underestimate the small moments of hope and love that we can provide to other people. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Tony Buckner, the Director of Special Services here in Newberg.
I'm Amy Stevens, the Behavioral Health and Special Ed Coordinator.
And we wanted to just make everyone aware that May is National Mental Health Awareness Month. So part of that, as Mental Health Awareness Month, we want to make sure that our families and our students know signs and concerns to be looking for in their students when anxiety or depression is of concern. So one easy way to look and identify whether or not your student or your child may be suffering from anxiety or depression, even on a small scale, is an acronym called SIGECAPS, SIGECAPS. It sounds weird, but each one of those is an indicator that even clinicians will look at to determine whether or not a student may be suffering from small bouts of depression or anxiety. So S, first one is sleep.
Sleep. So if your child is sleeping more, going to bed early, not being able to get up to get to school, and just you're finding that there's just a lot of escape through sleep, that is one sign.
I, interest. Students will see a dramatic decrease in the interest that what they used to find dear. A student that was a really exceptional painter or an artist or someone who's musically talented or an athlete, they no longer are going to have those same interests as they had before. They may want to, but they don't engage in that activity really to the same extent that they used to.
The next is G for guilt, and where your child may have an extraordinary amount of feeling guilty for things that you hadn't heard of before, things that they shouldn't be feeling ownership over or feeling guilty about, so things that they're sharing with you.
It could be as simple as failing a test, getting their first B. It could be a failed relationship that they're not super happy about. lots of different things that kids can feel guilty for, even though we as adults may look at that and be like, that was one small portion of the last week or two. So the next one would be E, energy. And you will see your fun, bubbly kid not acting the same way. So the energy levels of some of your students, you're gonna know right where they're at. They're normally a very even-keeled energy, or high energy like the student behind me. You're gonna see them really reduced with that energy level. They're not as boisterous, they're not as much fun as they used to be, and this impacts them greatly. And this should be a telltale sign of what's going on in their lives.
Okay, so the next would be C for concentration. So if you see your child having a really hard time being able to concentrate on maybe their homework or just being able to have a conversation with you, that they are very distractible and just have had a lot of change in just being able to focus.
Yeah, and I think not only will parents see that, but teachers will see that as well, when all of a sudden your kid isn't acting the same way that they used to be acting. So yeah. So the last one, or the one that I want to talk about next, is really an important one that I think parents will especially see, and that's appetite. You will see dramatic changes to your students' appetite. They no longer have an interest in eating foods that they used to enjoy, or the amount of food has increased significantly. And so we know that changes come up, with adolescence, that kids are generally going to be eating more and their patterns may change, but this is something out of the norm for them. So if they're eating more or eating a lot less, you should be concerned about some of these, depression or anxiety.
Great. The next would be psychomotor and agitation.
And what is psychomotor? That's a weird one.
So psychomotor is just feeling more agitated. So if something that typically they would have been more laid back about, they can just really explode and just have just really large feelings about. Something that is where they're maybe constantly just on edge and just feeling very agitated.
How do you know if it's really a warning sign towards depression or anxiety and not just the students going through hormonal changes as part of puberty?
So I think part of that is just taking a look at all of the signs that we're talking about today. Do you see all of these signs happening at the same time? Or if you're finding that some are at a larger extent than others.
Yeah, or gauging their reaction or the amount that they eat or they sleep or they are agitated compared to other kids their age. So if they have friends of theirs come over to the house and you see that your own child is a lot more aggressive or a lot more moody compared to others, that also might be a sign of anxiety and depression. So I think our last, the S in SIGGI caps now, is sleep. And sleep is one of the easiest ones to know for a parent whether or not they're having concerns about anxiety and depression. Your kiddo, if they're anxious, they're not going to be sleeping well. They're going to be restless. They're going to be up and down throughout the night. They're going to be limiting the amount of sleep they're having. If they've got depression or if they've got signs of depression, they're probably going to be sleeping a lot more than normal. And so again, putting this in perspective, that it is normal for kids, especially at the high school age, to have some increased sleep time. We're talking, they're spending more time sleeping than they are awake, and that should be a telltale sign of depression. So don't forget the acronym SIGGI camps, because I think it's really important to make sure that you're looking at all the symptoms and all the concerning areas, not just one. Yeah. So if you're watching this video, you've obviously been interested in our Mental Health Awareness Month. And so what would we want to encourage folks, our visitors, to know about mental health awareness?
So if you can make sure to share this information with others and be able to learn more about what we were talking about today, spend some time in, if there are concerns that you see, make sure to reach out and be able to share those concerns and ask for some help. People to talk to could be a pediatrician, could be a counselor, and make sure and get some more information so that you can make sure that your needs are met and your family's needs are met.
Yeah, I think it's really important that, again, you don't take all ownership of what's going on with your student who may be in crisis. It's okay to ask for professional advice on this. There's been such a negative stigma around mental health. I think it's time that we break that stigma and realize that it's okay to not be okay, to reach out for support. A school counselor is a great start. Mental health therapists are in each of our buildings, and so it's really a good time to reach out for support if you need it.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for watching and participating in our Mental Health Awareness Month. Really hope you learned something today. And again, if you have any concerns, please reach out to your school and let us know.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Harding. I'm a licensed clinical social worker at Lutheran Community Services Northwest. At Lutheran Community Services Northwest, I manage our school-based mental health program, as well as I'm a mental health clinician on the team. We've been partnering with Newberg School District since 2018 to provide mental health clinicians on site at all the elementary and middle schools in the district. I personally provide services at Dundee and Ewing Young Elementary. The district approached me about talking a little bit about anxiety and depression for today's video. So first, talking a little bit about kind of the causes of anxiety and depression. I think whenever we're having a conversation about anxiety and depression, trauma has to be part of that conversation. Trauma, those really distressing events that occur in our lives, it gets stored in our bodies, and students who don't have processed trauma, they're going to have more fight, flight, or freeze responses when triggered. And so, we just survived a pandemic, and that brought a lot of stress, a lot of social isolation, both of which are factors in anxiety and depression. I also think about, I work with young kids at the elementary level, and young kids are, they're sort of emotional sponges, really impacted by the adults around them. So I think it's also really important that we as adults, parents, caregivers, teachers, are also taking care of our own mental health and wellness, because by doing so, we're able to model those coping skills for our students, and then coach them through their anxieties too. When thinking about signs of anxiety and depression, some things are good to pay attention to. One would be if you're noticing changes in your child's mood or level of activity. If they're no longer enjoying activities that they once did, that could be a red flag. If they're isolating themselves, if they're withdrawn, you're noticing those changes in mood. I work with young kids, and so sometimes things that I see are things like stomach aches, headaches, unexplained illness with no clear cause. And sometimes that can be a manifestation of anxiety. Emotional outbursts, anger outbursts, or other sort of acting out behaviors can also be a communication that something is going on. And so rather than just disciplining that behavior, it can warrant a further discussion around what else is going on for this student. And then of course, if you're noticing self-harm or suicidal thoughts, that would definitely be a time to seek help for your student. How anxiety and depression fits with suicide, sometimes students experience symptoms of anxiety and depression and they don't have suicidal ideation, but sometimes suicide can feel like the only way out when an individual is in that much pain. And so it's really important when you're noticing those signs that we've talked about in this video, that you do get help for your students, and early intervention is key. It's one of the reasons I'm really grateful to be within an elementary school, because that early intervention can help prevent more serious mental health concerns into high school and adulthood. If you're suspecting that your student may be experiencing anxiety and depression, I would encourage you to sit down with that child or youth in a supportive one-on-one setting. Could be sitting in the car with them, where you're not directly looking at each other. Sometimes that can make things more comfortable for hard conversations. And checking in with them about the stressors in their lives and trying to assess whether they can handle those stressors or whether they're completely overwhelmed by it. If those symptoms of anxiety and depression persist, if they get worse, if it's preventing your student from going to school, getting up in the morning, doing their homework, just getting in the way of those daily life tasks, whether tasks that they need to do or that they would typically enjoy, that may be an indicator that further support is needed, whether that's mental health counseling, and especially if your student is showing signs of self-harm or talking about suicide, that would be a time to get professional help. At Lutheran Community Services, We are within the schools, in the elementary and middle schools, and provide mental health therapy for students regardless of insurance. School counselors are the ones who make the referral to the program, and then we can work with students on site during the school day. We also have a mental health clinic within Newberg and McMinnville, and students and their families can also access mental health services there. So parents, we can work with parents or older or younger youth within our clinic. We also have parenting classes that can support parents with knowing, okay, how do I engage with my youth who's experienced trauma, or provide parenting support around bonding with a child. So we have a variety of parenting classes that folks have access to in the community. In our school-based program, we're also going to have services available throughout the summer, and so folks can reach out about getting connected then. It is important to note that if your student is under the age of 14, they do need parental consent before receiving mental health services. At age 14 and above, they can consent to their own therapy. When I think about trends in the last couple years regarding anxiety, rates of anxiety are just increasing. There's a statistic from the National Center for Educational Statistics that states that 70% of schools nationally noticed an increase in requested and need for services for youth. And I personally, working in a school-based program, can resonate with the statistic of the increased need for mental health services based on the number of referrals we've received over the last couple of years, as well as the growing acuity of the referrals. So an example of that is just increased behavioral needs within the schools, and I think school staff can really relate to that too. At the same time, there's also this positive of folks being more willing and recognizing the importance of engaging in services, which is a real positive. There's a declining stigma around getting mental health support. And I think, the work that Newberg School District is doing in embedding mental health clinicians at the elementary level plays a role in that destigmatizing and normalizing of mental health services. Providing those mental health services at the young age really normalizes the support and teaches coping skills to students at a young age, again, to prevent those more serious concerns later in life. And finally, a word of hope or encouragement. I just want to speak to the parents, the caregivers, the teachers. The work that you're doing to support kids, it really matters. It makes a difference. I would encourage you to take care of your own stress, your own mental health, because our kids need you. What is something I would want to share with students about anxiety? And one thing that comes to mind is that the things that we're anxious of, we tend to avoid because that decreases that feeling of anxiety. The problem with this way of coping is that we're never proving ourselves wrong. We just get more anxious of that situation. For example, if I'm really anxious about public speaking, maybe I call out sick on all my school days where I have to give a classroom presentation. But then I would never prove to myself how capable I am and that I can do it. So one way that counseling can help is by helping students learn how to manage those feelings of anxiety so that they can get through those anxiety-inducing events. And learning things like how to sort of build up to an anxiety-inducing event. So for the example for classroom presentations, I might first practice my presentation in front of the mirror, and then in front of a parent, and then in front of a small group of people that I trust. And each time monitoring and repeating it until that feeling of anxiety is low enough where it feels really manageable, till finally I feel capable of giving that classroom presentation. So counseling can be really helpful for developing those grounding tools. I just want to thank you all for participating in the symposium, for watching this video. It's up to all of us to support our kids and to look out for their mental health and our own. And so I'm just really grateful to be a part of this experience with you all. And just want to say thank you for coming along on this journey.
Hi, Newberg-Dundee parents, Elise Yarnell, and I am the Access Director for Providence Medical Group, and with me I have...
I'm Dr. Jerry Turgeson, a clinical psychologist for Providence.
Thank you so much for tuning in today to learn a little bit more about how we can support our youth and families that are struggling with mental health. It has been a long journey over the last few years in Newberg and Dundee to help increase supports for mental health for our youth, and I feel like we've made huge progress because of the Newberg public school system and also our community partners. So today I'm going to ask Dr. Turgeson a couple of questions, and you can get her clinical knowledge as a psychologist. So Jerry, Dr. Turgeson, tell me what is a cause for anxiety and depression in our youth today?
Yeah, I think one of the really tricky things is that sometimes we always want there to be an explanation, and sometimes anxiety and depression just happen. So there's not always a causal component. We do know that a lot of our youth today, though, are struggling with a lot of stressors. So we have, I think, coming out of the pandemic, there's been a lot of social isolation that's impacted a lot of our relationships, how kids feel like they can connect with others. And then school is really hard. I think sometimes we as parents, it's really easy for us to reflect on what school was like when we were younger, but school today and social relationships today are much different. So things like online pressures with social media, expectations from classes, trying to navigate homework, social relationships, all of those pieces together can be really overwhelming for kids. So it can come from a lot of places. Sometimes it just occurs, other times outside triggers can be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and what are some signs and symptoms that parents could look for in their youth that are struggling with anxiety or depression?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things I always encourage parents to monitor for are significant changes in mood or how your kiddo is acting on day to day. So if you have a kid who's normally really outgoing, really bubbly, really engages with a lot of folks, and suddenly they're struggling to get out of bed, or maybe they're really introverted, that would be a really good kind of significant change that we would want to check in on. Additionally, if you start noticing lots of big worries, anxiety, increased physical symptoms, so things like headaches, upset stomach, muscle tension, those are also really good spaces for anxiety specifically that we'd want to check in with our kids about.
Great. And I know we know and have experienced super sadly and unfortunately in this community how anxiety and depression can be early signs, causes that can lead to suicidal ideation. Can you explain a little bit about the correlation and really how to prevent death by suicide?
Yeah, so unfortunately, suicidal ideation and thoughts of suicide are increasing in frequency, especially after COVID and the pandemic. We're seeing a significant increase in emergency department utilization for kids of all ages related to thoughts of suicide. So part of that gets back to what I mentioned with, if you notice any significant changes in your kid's mood or how they're functioning, we would definitely want to check in with them around, are they having thoughts of suicide? Other changes, so mood-related changes, I think are really important. If you have a kiddo that is mentioning thoughts of death, talking about death, we would really want to talk with them about whether they're having thoughts of suicide. Any sorts of like writing or drawing are always good indicators. But then also, I think more subtle things too, like changes in sleep patterns, difficulty sleeping. Are they maybe using substances? Mood changes, and then having a family history of suicide is an extra risk factor that we would want to be aware of. So if someone in their family, or if they're aware of someone or friends with someone who has had thoughts of suicide, we just want to make sure that we're checking in and giving some extra support for kids.
Great. Yeah. And to make this a little bit more real, something that I would just say as a teen and kid that struggled with anxiety and still struggles immensely with anxiety today is the best thing from my experience that I have found to combat the anxiety is to find a couple trusted people that I can speak my truth to and speak my race brain to and really talk it out to the end of what I'm stressing about. And so we want to be that. This health center here at the high school, we want to be that safe place that your family can rely upon, and we're super excited that we're open all summer long for families. So please access us. We are in Building K, just outside of Newberg High School, next to the tennis courts, and we'll be open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we have therapy services as well as physical health services. So please stop on by and see us this summer. Thanks so much.
Hi, we're here representing the Newberg-Dundee Police Department. We're pretty honored to talk about Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month.
I've seen a pretty huge shift in the 12 years I've been the school resource officer here. It seems like the most noticeable shift I've seen is we don't experience as many kids in crisis on a regular basis like we did 8-9 years ago. I want to say that's in big part or credit to the school district partnering with Providence and getting all the screeners and some mental health resources in for the students, especially with the school-based health center where they get regular appointments and I guess get like that regular maintenance. But the different shift I've seen is more of a social anxiety with kids, I think, especially after the COVID pandemic. I see a lot of kids that just seem more closed up, more engaged, or more affected by social media, more hooked on their phones, and less actual person-to-person interactions. And some of the even normal, typical interactions you would think would be, trivial or just normal can really stress a lot of these kids out. There's a lot of pieces about the social media. There's an addiction piece to it for sure, because there's that instant gratification and that instant scrolling through things nonstop that are giving you instant input. I also think it gives a fake reflection on society and working, because all they're seeing is people posting the best thing about their lives, and you don't see the people posting about the real struggles and rough times in our lives for the most part. And so I think that may set an unrealistic expectation for a lot of these kids. But the other piece with this is when there is some hate and bullying and drama that's going on, there's no disconnect from it. That's in their face, in their phone, 24/7 as long as they're on those phones. To where a lot of us old people when we were younger, if there was issues going on with kids at school, you got on the bus, you went home, and you were totally disconnected, because unless you physically ran into somebody or picked up a phone, you had that mental break from that kind of chaos and that drama. And kids don't have that based on the phones and social media these days.
There's really no do-over. I mean, once it's out there, it's out there.
Oh yeah.
You can't pull it back, and that's what's hard. And I think, with that social media aspect, I think it's difficult because it's out there for everyone to see it. You can't pull it back.
And you'll see that with a lot of intimate images that get shared and spread because of the phones and social media. Like revenge porn or hate porn, I guess is one way to put it. These images will be flying out there forever, and then some poor kid that has their images leaked and shared, they're probably in a place where they're getting better in life a couple years down the road, and then it resurfaces again and kicks up all that emotional pain and baggage and all that embarrassment, keeps coming back over and over again.
Yeah, some people might not know, but Jeff is on our peer support team. So he's had special training to recognize those types of things. He works very well with the health center, which I'm really glad to be here on campus. I think that helps. The more you talk about it, the more, or the less stigma there is. One of the things that we did was we put together the suicide awareness and prevention car. And that's just to get people talking, because the more you talk about it, the less shocking it is, or the less taboo it is. So we decked this car out. It's a car, it's one-of-a-kind car that we put together, and it comes to school every day with Jeff. I think it's almost as famous as Jeff. So
it's ridiculous.
That's been one of the nice things, that having Jeff specially trained to recognize those things. He does all of the assessments when there's a problem. When kids are in trouble because they make some sort of threat or something like that. He gets to go to all those things. Like I said, he works very well with the Providence Health Center that's on campus, which I think is wonderful.
Say something, talk to somebody, and try to remember that it's a temporary problem that's going to pass. And sometimes the pain is so huge and so in your face, it's easy to forget that it's a temporary thing. But stick with it and stick through it and work through your problems and speak out and reach out for help. Talk to people. There's all kinds of resources between the schools, families, friends, all kinds of different organizations throughout the community that offer resources. Find somebody to help you manage your stresses and your troubles in life. I see a therapist on a regular basis, because they can help me understand my emotions without me understanding, and it's a great step towards healing.
I would agree. I've seen a clinical psychologist for some tough times I was having related to work, and I think it's important to share those instances and not be afraid to talk about it. I've done the same thing with officers at the police department, to kind of let them know it's okay to do that. It's okay to see someone. It's not always easy. Those emotions that come to the top. You have to have some tools to kind of deal with that and put it in the right spot in your brain and work with it and get it out in a healthy way.
Be involved in their lives, and be involved in their phones and their social media. That phone isn't your kids' phone. You need to make sure for your own kids' protection that you monitor everything they do and who they're talking to and who they're socializing with and what websites they're on. And when you start seeing signs that are concerning you, talk with your kid. If you don't have an open communication with your kids, which a lot of parents don't have good communication with their kids, find a trusted adult that your kid will talk to. Reach out to a coach, reach out to a counselor. Trying to schedule an appointment for your kid for a therapist or a counselor in the community. There's so many resources out there, and the biggest thing is getting your kid to talk. So if you're seeing those red flag signs, even if you have a gut feeling, if you don't have anything tangible, even if there's a gut feeling there's something going on, make that effort, because it's worth it. Ignoring it won't make it go away, it'll just make it go worse.
On a less serious note, bring back the flip phone. Get rid of these other phones that can take so much video. I say bring back the flip phone. Thanks for your time. Thanks for watching. Thank you very much for supporting Mental Health Month. We really appreciate it. Officer Moreland.
And thanks for trusting us with your kids. They make life awesome.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. We are the counseling department at Newberg High School. Just want to introduce myself and ourselves to start off. I'm Sarah Stevens. I have the first part of the alphabet, so we break up our caseloads by students' last names, and I have the first little part of the alphabet. So if a student's last name begins with the letters A through D, then they're with me.
Hi Newberg Nation, I'm Angela Katz, and I have the next part of the alphabet here at the high school. So I work with students with the last names E through K.
Good morning everybody. Ignore the airplane flying over. My name is Nicki Eggiman, and I'm also one of the counselors here. I work with students that have the last names that start with L through R-I.
Hi Newberg, I'm Michelle Kim, and I'm one of the school counselors here at Newberg as well, and I have the end of the alphabet, and I have RJ through C.
Well, we're here today to talk about mental health. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. It's a very serious topic that impacts our students daily. We have a lot of resources here in Newberg, and we're just here to talk about trends and causes and things to look out for and to be aware of.
One of the things that I have noticed is an increase in anxiety and depression over the last several years. I've been a school counselor for a lot of years now, and when I first started, it felt like there was still students that struggled with anxiety, but it was more a doctor-diagnosed generalized anxiety disorder that usually came from sort of chemical imbalance and needed to be treated with medication. And I feel like now we're really seeing a change, and it's more can be a situational anxiety that's brought on by things like social media, overperformance, harassment that they can't get away from at home in the evening time. What do you see?
I think social media is one of the main causes right now for anxiety in our students. On social media, everybody puts their most perfect self out there, and there's this push to be perfect. Students compare themselves to others all the time, and then there's also the aspect of not feeling included. They see their friends doing these things, they wish that they were there, and they just really feel left out sometimes. And so I really think social media is probably the number one cause for anxiety and depression right now. A lot of times also there are family issues that can cause anxiety and depression at home, relationships, whether it's friends, siblings, parents, just not not getting along, and then the pressure to do well in school, being that perfect student, being that 3-sport athlete, having straight A's, and that internal pressure to just be perfect when you don't need to be perfect, just be yourself.
And I think another thing that's really a big cause too is this is the actual first year that our students have been in school, where we like to call normal school, without actually having COVID be kind of a pre-factor to everything. And so they're really trying to engage and learn how to be a student again. And so this will obviously be their first full year back since then. And so for them to come to class, go to period to period to period, going into classrooms with, full class of students and teacher, we still have several students who are feeling very timid about all that too. And that creates a lot of anxiety in them. And so I'm very thankful that we have people that respect the mask wearing around here and stuff like that. But we do have quite a few students and families who are very nervous, and creates a bunch of anxiousness and anxiety even with just coming back to school.
I think some things to look for when you are, at home and you're thinking maybe, and this goes for friends too, if you're thinking, peers who have friends who they think maybe are going through anxiety or depression, some signs or symptoms for parents to look for too is really avoidance of normal activities that they used to really want to do and are now feeling like not interested. Avoiding school attendance can be a big sign if students just stop coming to school. I think also just irritable behavior or sleeplessness, those are signs of anxiety and depression. Just changes overall that are just new or different. Hygiene can be affected sometimes when students are feeling anxious and having depression.
Eating habits can be a big one too.
Yep.
Whether it's, going from a normal eating to excessive or to not eating as much as they used to. That could be a huge symptom as well.
And as someone who struggles with anxiety, I know for me, the psychosomatic symptoms are also a big deal. So if you start noticing changes in headaches, stomach aches, not feeling well before school or before a sporting event, something like that, take notice of patterns, because sometimes that's just the anxiety in the body trying to get out and creating your body to feel really upset. And those can be big signs that sometimes we miss and we think, oh, it's just a stomach bug or they just have a headache today. But patterns are important to recognize with that.
And I think it's good to ask the question as a parent or a teacher in the classroom. I know we ask these questions as school counselors is, wow, something seems a little bit off, Sarah. Like you don't seem quite like yourself, or what's going on? Like, I think often we think hands off, especially as they get into high school, my student doesn't need me as much, but actually they really do need you. And having the conversation and staying engaged in the relationship with your student. Parents really, our guardians are the first kind of line of defense for students. And so having those conversations and not being afraid to ask the question or noticing behavior.
Because a lot of times too, they're just waiting for someone to ask that question and not necessarily come and ask for that help or come out and just say, hey, I'm struggling with this. They want somebody to notice because they are having a hard time taking that first step and getting that information out. So the more that we can be aware or notice these different changes in them and just ask that simple question will go so far in helping and supporting a student.
Yeah. Also, as we were kind of preparing for this, I was thinking about like what we want to tell students. And I was thinking about my own experience with anxiety, because I think at some level we all experience that and how we kind of cope with it or have our skills. But I was thinking about being as a child, like a little kid, and waking up in the middle of the night and seeing something in my room that was scary. And I was sure it was probably a monster or an intruder or, something that I didn't know because it was dark and I couldn't see it. And I remember just how many times either I would hide under the covers because I was afraid to face it, or I didn't know how to know what to do. And so either I would, call out for my mom to come, or I would just be scared. My heart would be racing all night. I would probably fall back asleep, but then I would wake up in the morning and I would see that it was just my dresser with a blanket on it or something that was totally something I could see. And until like that whole sense of like light or like drawing attention or like kind of a
calling it out,
calling it out.
Naming it. For sure.
It's like we can't really deal with it or know what it is if we're just kind of keeping it to ourselves. And so I just think about that's kind of what we're here for, is to help kind of shine that light for kids sometimes, or be that sounding board for kids who maybe don't have that relationship at home to talk.
Right. That's a great story.
I like that.
Yeah, I do too. Well, I think that's the super important part too, is like, with like, what do we tell people how do we help the students? There's so many different avenues and so many different places you can go, from just coming to us as school counselors with our teachers. Even parents will come to us and just want to have a conversation like this is going on. So we can be a great resource. We have school-based health center that can be a great resource, but also too for parents, like I have to say, even just going to your primary physician and talking about your student and your child, about what you're seeing at home. Is this typical? Is this something I should be concerned about? Letting your child have that conversation and seeing what kind of other resources might be out there. It never hurts to get a full realm of just everybody's, not necessarily everyone's opinion, but just making sure everything is well with your child. So.
And another resource that I think can be really helpful for students is we recognized as a school the trend in increase in ADHD and anxiety and depression years ago. And so actually one of our teachers started a mindfulness class, and it's actually a class where all they do is practice mindfulness, meditation skills. It's not a lot of theory. He actually has them sit on the floor and be engaged and doing different things to help students really kind of find their center and figure out how to stay in the moment and stay regulated.
Yeah, like you said, Michelle, it's been a long time since kids have been in school. In a normal school. And so just learning those regulation skills. And what do I do when I'm in class and I'm feeling overwhelmed? And whereas when I was at home on Zoom, I could just turn my camera off, I could lay down, I could like disconnect, but now I'm in class and I have to engage, and it's just different, relearning some of those skills.
Even just breathing. Like taking a few minutes to take a few deep breaths to calm, center yourself, be able to just like that. It goes a whole long way than just reacting and getting out and just not breathing and holding your breath. So taking a few deep breaths.
And that's what we want students to do. We want them to seek us out, come to the counseling center if they're feeling overwhelmed, feeling like anxiety is kind of setting in. Come see one of us, and we go through those techniques with our students. Take some deep breaths, thinking about different strategies or coping skills and naming those and how to get through the hard times. We really welcome all students to come in at any time. The teachers are so great here. We have such a wonderful teaching staff, and a student can just say, hey, can I go see my school counselor? Yep, no questions asked. They come on down and see us. So we're really fortunate in that aspect.
So as we transition into summer, keep in mind that the Surgeon General has actually issued a new warning for social media use for teenagers, and they're recommending less than 3 hours a day to be on screens and social media, which I know can be really tough. But one of the things that they have noticed is the increase in anxiety and depression doubles with poor mental health as they spend over 3 hours a day on screen time. So one of the things to kind of think about and be aware of is when we were parents and we were young, if the harassment or bullying was happening, which has been going on since the beginning of time, people sometimes say mean things. We always had like this clique and this friend group, and they would hear it and it might spread to the next one, but then pretty soon it would just fade away. There was other things to talk about. And now with social media, the teenagers can't get away from that.
Can't escape.
They cannot escape. And so it's hundreds and thousands of followers, and everybody's hearing it and everybody's seeing it on social media, and they go home and it's no longer just the hallway or the PE or the classroom. It's happening on their screen, which is supposed to be a safe place for them. So just one more reason to kind of be aware of finding alternate activities over the summertime.
Well, we thank you so much for letting us be a part of this symposium. We're glad to be a part of Newberg Nation, and we hope all of you go from here and enjoy the rest of Mental Health Awareness Month. We should be aware of it all year, always. and we hope that you have a great summer.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank
you.
Thank you.
If you or anyone that you know are experiencing a mental health crisis or having thoughts of suicide, please reach out to the Oregon Youth Line or the Crisis and Suicide Prevention Line 988. This is an incredible resource that is available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and have staffed, trained professionals who can help to support you or anyone that you know who may be experiencing a mental health crisis.
Newberg Public Schools would like to thank everyone that participated in this symposium. And on behalf of everyone that did participate, we would all like to thank you for watching. Have a great summer.